I'm going to call this meeting of the Economic Development and Utility Modernization Ad Hoc Committee to order. We are still working on a new name, so it'll be a little shorter and not take up so much time to read the title of the committee. That is still in the process of being done. So with that, I want to kind of preview the day and thank all my committee members for being here. I know it's December, it's getting close to the holidays, but we're also getting close to the beginning of session. And so we've got to get things going and be prepared. And wanted to kind of just preview where we currently are from working with staff and on our topics. The education bill, which is in your packet, and I know those who are on virtually were sent it electronically. This is the current draft of it, and so I encourage you guys, read over it, provide suggestions. You know, we're not going to file this or something like this till January. I wanted to give y'all time to read over it. As I said, the goal was taking what RIA is and applying it to a rural school, infrastructure authority. Like I have a couple changes I've already noted, for reading over it that we'll do. But I want some input because this is a new thing. However, it's not a new topic, as we've discussed. This has been done by proviso for years, and so the goal is to more or less, if we're going to be putting money into a program like this, it needs to be a permanent thing that has goals and metrics that it's judging by, not something we're arguing every year over a new process. Especially when you're spending tens of millions of dollars, it needs to be something that's, I think we all agreed, has goals and a mission and is housed at the Department of Education, who are the experts and have the subject matter experts to do it. Feel free to take your time on that one and provide feedback by email or something to staff or to me. Happy to work on it. And as we keep getting updated drafts, we'll keep sharing those out because that one's going to be a little more of a complicated one going forward. And then secondly, we've been meeting with groups. We had our hearing on business lending. We've been meeting with the banks, the credit unions, JETA, a couple other groups, and every time we have a meeting, it gets a little more complicated. And so instead of trying to rush a topic, our thought was, let's take our time and get that right, because we want to make sure if we're going to go down the road to try to help out small business lending, that A, the program's successful, B, whatever state dollars have to be involved are protected, and that it's also something that our lending agencies actually would want to participate in. We don't want to create a program that the people who need to do it don't want to participate. And so we're going to keep working on that through session. So my goal is to continue to have committee meetings when we get back into session, and we'll keep working. We're not going to just turn off come January and start back in June. We'll meet sporadically during session outside of our normal committee times to keep working, especially on the business lending piece as it gets a little more complicated. And then lastly, BPP. Business personal property tax cut. Ways and Means staff are here. They've been working on this topic with us, and we're currently getting scenarios drafted from Frank Rainwater on cost and how it would work and trying to find the right combo. And so the goal is when we come back in January, we'll have a meeting where we present a bill, the cost. Remember, that cost only affects small local governments. The state does not collect BPP revenue and spend it, so that cost is something that'll be on our locals, and so we want to make sure that we've done some due diligence on the numbers and that all of us have a chance to see that before we just file something. Any comments or no, Roger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question. I assume that Association of Counties and Municipal Association have been kind of an integral part of these discussions.
Yes, I actually talked to Association of Counties last week about it, kind of updated on where we currently were. But like I said, we want their input on this because we want to make sure, no matter what we do for small businesses, that we make sure our counties are protected as the best way we can. So yeah, they have been involved in the discussion.
Thank you.
And then lastly, kind of my goal for today, if there are any more questions, inside your packet are two bills, H3773 and S654. These are two topics that really we found that kind of go along with our small business, startup business thought, and also our rural infrastructure thought. And so I wanted to present them today and allow advocates for these bills to kind of present the bills, talk about what they do. And if the committee is okay, I think our thought would be is if the costs, once we get costs back on all these, we don't have that today. If it's something we can do and we can roll it into our BPP bill and maybe have one bill that touches on both these topics along with BPP, or if not, depending upon the cost. But I wanted to give these bills their own day to kind of have a semi-hearing so that the committee knows what they are, and then y'all can kind of give me direction of what you want to do. Do you want to include them? Would you not? Y'all can kind of give direction. So when we bring a bill, if they're, if we want to include them, we can roll those into the larger package. So I do want to give some preview of both of them. I want to start with H 3773. This bill actually has passed the House before, so y'all might remember it. This was now Senator Elliott's bill, and I think we've passed it before overwhelmingly. And so it deals with corporate license fees and a lot of startups and small businesses that do that and how it could make us more competitive. We've passed it, and the Senate President Alexander, has actually filed a companion version of this bill in the Senate. So I do think it's a topic that the Senate is looking at doing and feel pretty confident in. And since it's something we've already passed and goes along with BPP, I wanted to kind of see what people thought. And so I know there's some people here who want to talk about this bill. So I want to turn the floor over to them to talk about what it would do, how it works, why it's important, and then let all of us ask questions and kind of get to the bottom of it. So I don't have names, but if, whoever wants to talk about this bill, feel free to come on up, introduce yourself to committee, and whoever you represent.
Committee members, I am James Chappell, President and CEO of SE Bio. We're the trade association for the life sciences industry in South Carolina. We do a lot with economic development, policy, and also entrepreneurship. A lot of you hopefully already know this. Life sciences is one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing industry in South Carolina. Also, according to the latest bio report, which is a national organization, we're right around top 5 in the country for growth. So we have a really once in a multi-generational opportunity. These are really high paying jobs. These are companies that are solving all the diseases that plague us today. These are companies coming out of our universities like MUSC, USC, Clemson. And while we have a huge opportunity and we have a great foundation on the large manufacturing side, we want to continue to recruit that. I think really where our goal is at SE Bio and as a state, and we represent about 200 members, almost every life science company, all the research universities, most of the colleges are all members of ours. We have this really unique opportunity that not only do we want to continue this growth, top 5 is great, we have an opportunity to become a new hub for life sciences. We want to be in the same breadth when people talk about the place where they want to go with their life science company, with the Massachusetts, California, and our neighbor in North Carolina. And that's absolutely real, as you know, with everyone moving here, with it now being a top 3 priority for commerce and the governor and the state. We really have a ton of momentum here and want to continue that. And again, I think where we're going to really get where we want to go, it's the companies that are small today. It's a small business. We have Scott Pancoast here who will talk about his business. We have companies coming out of our universities who are raising money. They're raising anywhere from, most of our companies right now are raising anywhere from $1, $2 to $10 million. Well, South Carolina is a real outlier, and they're being taxed on venture capital money. As a lot of you know, life science companies, certainly if you're talking about therapeutics, someone working on a cancer drug or Alzheimer's drugs, which are all really important to a state, that can take a decade of pre-revenue. So you're raising money for a decade before you make it to market, if you make it to market at all. So they're being taxed on all of that. So in South Carolina, a $10 million investment, you're going to have a $10,000 annual tax on that. It's certainly not uncommon, and this is where we want to go, to have a $100 million investment, a $500 million investment. So if you're looking at a $100 million investment from a South Carolina life sciences company, that's an annual tax they're going to have before they're making any money of $100,000 a year. And that's going to continue on. There's nothing that's going to change that for them as long as they're pre-revenue. And I think, too, and we'll certainly make sure that people get this, we pulled what other states are doing. We're a real outlier. We focused on the Southeast. Most states don't have this tax or aren't taxing investment dollars at all. Georgia, for example, caps it at $5,000. That's a big difference, as I mentioned, from a potential $100,000 tax to someone who raises $100 million. Alabama taxed it at $15,000. States like Florida, Louisiana just got rid of theirs a couple of years ago. They don't have it at all. Kentucky doesn't have it at all. Mississippi's phasing theirs out in the next couple of years. And at a high level, if you look at North Carolina, which is by far our biggest competitor in this area, who we're trying to compete against, at a high level, North Carolina and Tennessee look very similar to ours, but what they do and we don't is they account for liabilities. So the example that I have here, obviously you're pre-revenue, you're spending that $10 million or $100 million investment really quickly. We don't account for that. So on that $100 million investment, it's a $100,000 tax. For North Carolina, you can offset all those tax, which obviously there's a lot of costs. When you're looking at clinical trials, at lab equipment, at new hires, you're going to quickly take that tax down to zero. So if you look at just an example of a $100 million investment and if you have $80 million in liability, the North Carolina tax is only going to be just under $30,000, and it's going to quickly go down to zero as you spend that money. South Carolina, you're going to be at $100,000 for perpetuity on that investment. So that is one thing where we have companies all the time. We have an accelerator program. We have a demo day in Charleston. We have companies coming from Boston, North Carolina, Singapore, Ireland, all doing therapeutics work. The amount of people who want to move here, they love Charleston. I have a call later today when I leave here with a radio pharmaceutical company, Rhodes Scholar from MD Anderson in Boston, has had a successful exit. He wants to move to Charleston. But it's hard for me to tell him, hey, bring your business here. You're going to have to raise all this money and we're going to have this big tax. They want to move here. We have MUSC, who's now started their own fund, SERA, who's an SE launch, who are investing in these companies. We need to grow those companies. So we don't want to create headwinds on taxes. And then, to kind of wrap it up too, quite frankly, maybe cutting off our nose to spite our face, because we may be taxing them on $100,000 if they get to that $100 million raise. And what do you think their investors are going to say? Oh, come to North Carolina, leave South Carolina. So we're leaving all those jobs on the table, all those future taxes on the table for this taxing investment. So huge opportunity, the excitement that we have about South Carolina, and it's not a pipe dream. You can see the amount of coverage we're getting in South Carolina. For those of you in economic development, know Site Selection Magazine, South Carolina just got called out as one of the future spots for life sciences in South Carolina. We're getting picked up by national publications. Everyone's seeing what has happened. There was a thing called Biotech Under the Palms with BioCentury. We wish they'd call it Biotech Under the Palmetto, but you take what you can get for national coverage. We have huge momentum. We have a huge opportunity, high-paying jobs, innovative jobs that are curing the diseases that plague us so much today. People want to move here. But having this tax, it makes it a little harder when we go out and talk to all these companies or talk to a company about why here and not North Carolina or Boston or someone else. So I appreciate your time and happy to answer any questions or any other thoughts that you have.
Any questions? Go ahead. Mr. Gatch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said something about in perpetuity. You said that on a $100 million investment, there would be a $100,000 tax in perpetuity. What did you mean by in perpetuity?
Well, I guess maybe in perpetuity is not the right, but based on their capital stock that they're issuing. So they will be taxed on that capital stock as they issue shares for that investment. So that's not going to change. That's not going to decrease over time because that capital stock has now been issued.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Ms. Smith.
Just to follow up, thank you. Mr. Chappell, when you compare to South Carolina to the other states that are obviously our competitors, at what point is basically the structure these other states are setting up? They're utilizing our tax base, but only on corporate profit. Is that the idea? So that the startup, all the venture capital, all of that basically, in effect, is relatively tax-free on the front end? Is that kind of what you're
That's certainly a big
steering
part
at?
of it. A lot of states do that. The states that do they are still taxing that capital. I think I mentioned Georgia, for example, has a $5,000 cap on it. So they're trying to keep it really
regardless of the investment.
Yes.
$5,000.
Yes, and then North Carolina is it scales up with investment. So the bigger investment, the bigger the tax, but you're able to bring that down based on cost and liability. So while you may have a decent sized tax bill, if you raised $100 million or $500 million, which certainly, again, is not uncommon when you're talking about a biotech company or even a med device company, certainly not a biotech company, you may get a little bit bigger tax bill, but obviously you're spending that money. If you're pre-revenue, you're spending it pretty quickly. So you're probably never going to really pay on that $100 million. And then on year 2, 3, you're basically paying zero because you're bringing that down every year.
What, do you have a sense, and this may be a question for someone else, but do you have a sense of the total revenue the state is currently taking in on, you've got it, okay, good.
I have a rough estimate. I look back at an old impact statement on this bill. I think yearly it was only like $1.8 million for the state. So in our world, that was a pretty small number.
Thank you, Mr.
1.8.
Chappell. I appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chappell, thank you for your testimony. And, you know, as one of those entrepreneurs and small business owners myself, I appreciate and haven't seen any type of tax incentives and tax breaks that I haven't loved myself. So I'm with you and fully support this. My question to you is really more on the macro scale, because all of us up here and on the county and the municipal level, you are well aware, South Carolina is not exempt, the issues and challenges that our country is facing as it relates to workforce readiness, workforce development issues, alongside the affordability issue and the housing crisis that we find ourselves in. Any concerns that you have that would come alongside any of these that you think that we need to be thinking about as well? Or do you not have any of those concerns and that's not a space that you're operating in?
No, I think that we're certainly aware of all of them. Workforce is one that we pay a lot of attention to. We know, as I mentioned, the growth that we have in the state. We've got to continue to fill the top of that pipeline. And going back to competition, we have places like North Carolina. Now, this is less on the early stage companies we're talking about today, but large manufacturing. They have whole floors that they do with their technical colleges where people can come in and train on the equipment that they'll be using at one of these large pharma companies. We work very closely with MassBio in Massachusetts. They have something called Bioversity, which brings people in to train them to go in and work with one of these biotech companies. We're doing a lot here. We can always do more. We work very closely with our technical colleges. We created a certificate in partnership with them to help on that pharma or med device manufacturing side. We launched an app called RadLab, which is aimed at middle school students. We actually found that older people were playing. It's gamification of life sciences. It's geofence for South Carolina, where they're learning about lab skills and things like that. They're playing a game, but they're learning about measurement and lab skills. And because it's geofence for South Carolina, we can also let it pop up and say, hey, we see that you're in Berkeley County or you're in Richland County. Did you know that this company down the road, you could make $80,000 a year or $150,000 a year being a chemist or whatever else? So workforce is a huge concern of ours and something we work really closely with. I think we're doing a lot there, but we can always do more because, again, we're a very fast-growing ecosystem, but we're not a household name yet, and yet being the key word. When we talk about the growth we have, we still get, and it's getting less and less, we still get, oh, I knew about North Carolina. I didn't know about South Carolina. Tell me what's happening here. I love South Carolina. I love Charleston. I love the mountains. I have a daughter at USC. I can't tell you how many people have a child at College of Charleston or USC or Clemson. So they know about South Carolina. They love South Carolina. But they have to be convinced that it's the right place to do business when it comes to life sciences. And again, talking about these more early stage companies, and Scott's a great example of this. Scott was in San Diego. He spent time in Boston. I'm sure, and I'm putting words in his mouth, but he's got to justify to his investors, why South Carolina?
Right.
Why aren't you in Boston? I'm going to invest in you, but come to Boston or come to RTP. So we have to do all we can to continue to stack those layers to make that decision easier and easier for investors and entrepreneurs, and that goes to workforce and policy and capital and just that collaborative spirit that we have in South Carolina.
It truly is refreshing to hear you in your comments. I mean, you're really driving it down even to that middle school level, I'm sure, which is the STEM-focused education. It's starting as early as that middle school. And I think we have 40, Mr. Chairman, 40 career academic centers in high schools across the state that's been some wonderful successes from. And our partnership with, I think it's 17, the technical community college that are getting that workforce certificate ready. So we need to continue to lean on the private sector that you represent to bring those proven successes in the state. And so don't be shy. And Scott, we look forward to hearing from you and some of those successes as well, and whatever we can do to equip to continue to move the needle forward. Because through those high wage paying jobs that you're speaking about, that's going to directly address the affordability issue, because what we don't need is more $15 to $20 an hour jobs that we're creating in economic development for us in the Low Country. As you well know, we're not just looking for any and everyone to come down there. We do want to make sure we're bringing good quality, high wage paying jobs that will generationally change things for families in the Low Country.
I appreciate that, and I guess I should mention too, we see with everything at least a $100,000 average wage when you're talking about life sciences jobs.
With no more questions, I'll let our business owner come up and talk to us about it. But, what really stood out to me was, like I said, we got to get an updated cost, but previous one was like 1.8 million a year. I think if one of these companies is successful, they're going to pay way more in tax in 1 year than what we're cutting from the, to me, it seems like common sense, but happy to have a business owner here who can talk to us about his experience and his industry and how he can help.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Scott Pancoast. I was in San Diego 20 years. I invested on behalf of a very high net worth family in startups. And so I was on the investor side. I then, my son went to Furman and decided to stay here. He thought he could shake us, but we showed him. We moved right behind him. I decided to start a company of my own. I forged a license agreement with Albert Einstein College of Medicine up in the Bronx. And the company's called Xylo Therapeutics. We are the only sustained delivery drugs, sustained delivery system for drugs for topicals. So unless you want to wear a patch, which provides sustained release, you need our technology. So it's these little particles that you rub into the skin. The particles stay there. They provide sustained release for 24 to 36 hours, and eventually they slough off as part of the skin's normal exfoliation process. Very cool technology. It's been further developed and commercialized here in South Carolina. And it's broad enough that we've spun out 3 other companies. One's a skincare company, but the other 2 are pharma companies. One of them is just 2 people, PhD, MBA, and an MD. They both live out of state. Their lab is in South Carolina, but they're now planning to raise initially 10 to 20 million, but eventually 40, 50, 60 million dollars. It's pretty easy for them to pull from South Carolina just on this one point and have their resident state be where they live currently, okay? Which has advantages based on stuff you'll see. The other startup, that's called Atticus Pharma. The other one is Finch Pharma, Atticus Finch. There's a method behind that. And he's in Charleston. He's got 2 teenage daughters. He and his wife used to live in Pennsylvania. Again, pretty easy for them to say, they need to raise about 60 to 80 million dollars. Pretty easy for them to make a decision that, hey, we'll head back to where her family is in Pennsylvania, which happens to be one of the 6 or 7 hubs of life sciences. So this does make a difference. Every time Xylo, the company that, remains under my control, I'm executive chair of those other companies, we've raised $9 million. We pay $9,000 a year for this tax. As he says, it stays. And we're about to do another round, our Series C round. So that 9,000 is going to go to 13 or 14,000. That's painful every time we have to pay that. So there's that. The other thing is, this doesn't just affect life science. Now, life sciences, on average, will raise more money than a software startup or an RFID or AI or other types of companies. But still, a lot of them will raise many tens of millions of dollars. So it's a factor. And you know that these economic development people in these other states, they have the same information, and they're using it against us. And James and his people have done a phenomenal job at SC Bio. There are a bunch of other entities in South Carolina that create what I call a wonderful cradle of support for startups. But you'll notice there are very few companies in South Carolina that do raise $50 to $100 million, and maybe there's a connection there, okay? The ones that are thinking, hey, I'm just going to need $5 or $15 million, maybe I can afford it. It's not going to be too big of a deal. But those who have the big dreams, they don't seem to be coming, our way to South Carolina. And maybe it works both ways. Those who have the big dreams who live in South Carolina, start thinking about moving to other states. So that, I think, is it, and I'll now open it up for questions.
Absolutely. Well, first off, thank you for starting a business in South Carolina, or businesses in South Carolina. We're happy to have you. And, kind of following up what we said earlier, definition of a small business, 2 employees, 3 employees, these kind of fall right under that same topic. But any questions from the committee or anyone online? I know a couple of our members are online. I know, that's what I was thinking. But thank you so much for coming here today and talking about your industry. We really appreciate that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So kind of moving on, if there's no one else on this topic, to the second bill. Like I said, this one we don't have any kind of financial estimate. We want to just talk about the topic, see what y'all think. As y'all know, we've put a lot of money and time into broadband access in South Carolina. We've done that for years now. This bill deals with a sales tax exemption for telecommunication companies that kind of do broadband. And it's a bill that was introduced in the Senate. Wanted to just talk about it today, see what you think, and give the proponents an opportunity to present to us. So I know, I think Terrence is here to talk about it, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Newton, committee members. Thank you for this opportunity to spend a couple moments talking about broadband expansion and technology expansion in the state of South Carolina. As you know, we've been around for about 145 years, connecting South Carolinians to services, right? Connecting them to phone and internet, and we remain committed to closing the digital divide here in South Carolina. With that said, our current infrastructure that's out here, our copper network, is reaching end of life. And we are working now to install fiber networks in order to enhance the quality and enhance or provide the services that are needed in today's economy. Due to forward-thinking public policy here in South Carolina, that encourages advancement and advanced communication infrastructure, South Carolina has made significant progress on broadband here in the state of South Carolina. The industry, along with the South Carolina Broadband Office, has done a good job putting forth plans and planning to make sure we cover the state of South Carolina and connect all South Carolinians to services. The State Broadband Office actually just received approval to address the last approximately 20,000 plus eligible unserved addresses in South Carolina through the federally funded BEAD program. But remember, these are just earmarks that are slated to come to South Carolina. They require additional funding from private companies in order to make this happen. Every project being considered requires significant private capital as a part of the bid. So closing the digital divide here in South Carolina is closer, but we're still a long ways from being complete. Our industry has a vision for finishing the job, but we need your help to ensure that we can utilize our capital here within the state with the same efficiency as other states that surround us, as well as operate on equal footing with others that provide service. And I'm speaking more from telecommunications provider perspective, right? As we work to expand broadband here in South Carolina, telecommunications providers are working at a significant disadvantage than others of our neighboring states. Currently, South Carolina imposes a sales and use tax on machinery and equipment purchased by communication service providers to expand and improve their broadband networks. That means that 7.5 cents out of every dollar, instead of going into the broadband networks, is going to the state government. Every year, as a part of my job here at AT&T, I am charged with having conversations and working with our folks at headquarters in Texas to encourage investment to come to South Carolina. Quite frankly, the business-friendly policies that we have here in South Carolina that you all and your predecessors have put in place have allowed me to get our fair share here in South Carolina. We've invested more in the last 5 years, $1.4 billion in our network here in South Carolina. So the policies that we have in place here are really good, and you guys have done a great job of making them very business-friendly here in South Carolina. However, this issue has come up here recently in my conversations during advocacy with the folks in Texas. North Carolina and Tennessee, for example, have an exemption for these taxes, which allow my peers in those states to invest 100% of the money that they receive from Texas into their network. So they don't pay taxes on the front end for these. That, of course, is helping them to build a more robust network quicker, right? The more money you can put into your network, the quicker you can get to where you need to be from a technology perspective. In my opinion, this could have a negative impact on South Carolina from an economic development perspective when competing with our neighboring states for technology jobs or even headquarters. Cable providers here in South Carolina, they don't pay the sales and use tax when they go out to expand their broadband networks here in South Carolina. Satellite companies as well, they also don't pay sales and use tax on their investment on their equipment. This creates an unlevel playing field for communication service providers who compete with these companies to provide broadband service. We are one of only 2 states where this discrepancy is in place. Leveling the playing field for all communication service providers would further encourage broadband and other investment in South Carolina. It allows for dollars that are already allocated. You know, they give me my allocation to spend, and we go spend it in the state. So it's not going to go anywhere else except for going back into our network. Every dollar that is allocated to South Carolina will be spent for its intended purposes, which is to expand broadband. We're asking you to consider giving the same sales tax exemption afforded to cable and satellite to communication service providers so that we can accelerate investment in building broadband networks in South Carolina. So instead of paying the 7.5 cents on every dollar, those dollars would end up going back into the network, connecting more citizens of South Carolina to internet. It'll also end kind of the double taxation where we'll only be taxed on the output and not the inputs that we use in order to manufacture broadband services. Additional broadband investment, we believe, will boost state and local revenues due to increased economic activity, including higher local property tax revenues for broadband equipment that we install and the cities and counties that we install them in. Every dollar saved on taxes is a dollar that can be reinvested in expanding broadband to more South Carolinians. This is necessary tax policy to ensure maximum effectiveness of investment and to keep South Carolina competitive among neighboring states. We look forward to continued investment in furthering our mission of connecting more South Carolinians. That's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have for me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here today. As y'all can see, members, it's kind of a very odd issue. We're kind of an outlier and also has an unfairness component too. But any questions? I think Mr. Kirby had one.
Thank you, Mr. Ford, for being with us. Do you have a sense of how many dollars of those federal dollars that were originally passed by the Biden administration in the Infrastructure Act, how many of those dollars are still remaining unspent
Okay,
or
so,
unallocated?
so there's two.
The original was like 65 billion or something like that?
Well, the big number was 65 billion. I believe
Right.
we had 400 million that came to South Carolina.
Right.
And the way that works is, good point. I mentioned that there's 20,000 homes that funds need to be allocated for. Well, the work from the previous, I think that's 500 million or something like that, that's going to take care of those. But the original 400 million, we're still working to build out those locations. We're still not there, right? So I don't know how many dollars are left, but that's a reimbursement program. And I will tell you that we have not even, it's been allocated. It probably just hadn't been reimbursed yet. So all of the dollars, I believe, from the original 400,000 have been allocated to something. They just haven't been given to providers because the job's not necessarily complete.
If I remember correctly, there was wasn't it sometime toward the end of 24 that those projects had to be identified and
That's correct.
contracted and that type of thing?
And the plan is, and again, the broadband office would have to, so don't quote me on this, this is what I know from just them having conversations with me. I believe all of those projects have to be actually completed by the end of 2026. And then the dollars have to be allocated or given out by first quarter or something like that of 2027. So those projects have to be complete by the end of next year.
This issue impacts AT&T. It also impacts our local co-ops, telephone co-ops as well. Is that correct?
It is all telecom providers in South Carolina. Local co-ops, your wireless carriers as well are impacted because they've got facilities that go to their towers. And, broadband is delivered in many different ways. Like most of you probably will use your phones to connect in some way, email, whatever. That's all data, right? Yeah. So it is an industry issue that we're looking at trying to resolve. But good question. Thank you.
Well, obviously being from a rural area, the importance of this build out is anticipated greatly for a number of us. So thank you for what you're doing, Mr. Chairman. Whatever we need to do to get this piece of legislation done, I'm on board. All in. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Mr. Gatch, then Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as the broadband initiative continues to reach out into the rural areas of South Carolina, will that mean that many more thousands and tens of thousands of people who aren't currently accessing internet services will be able to access internet services?
Yes, but quicker.
So
Yes,
not
and
only
faster.
So some people will be able to do what they're doing now much faster. Some people who aren't currently having good access or any access will be able to access more.
And when I say faster, I don't mean speed faster. I mean, whereas we AT&T, and that's the only way I can speak of it, we get allocated a certain amount of dollars for this year. The more money I can put towards that broadband service, the quicker we'll get people service. We'll get to more people quicker because we can spend more dollars
I see what you're saying.
on service versus, okay, well, that's got to be in my build for next year because I don't have enough dollars to do it in my capital expenditure for this year. So yes, to answer your question.
kind of connecting some dots that aren't completely relevant to this meeting, but when I think about the AI race and data centers in South Carolina, and I start to think about how we're trying to expand for obvious reasons, because it's hard to imagine how you can operate normally, just day to day without good access to the internet. But if we start being successful in this with some of these reforms that we're proposing here, and we are expanding the reach of broadband to more people in rural areas, and we add thousands and thousands of people, then it just makes me think about how much more we may need data centers and energy to support that. I don't know, that pull on the system. So I was just trying to see if that thought I was having was somewhat reasonable, and it sounds like it's somewhat reasonable.
I think it's reasonable, and I was kind of thinking through, what I would talk about today. But I think the pandemic really highlighted the significance of ensuring that you've got the right technology, the most modern technology, to do whatever it is you need to do to run a business, whether it's AI or something else. So when COVID hit, we realized the technology wasn't quite where it needed to be, right? In order to, and technology companies, the rural telcos, the AT&Ts of the world, the wireless companies of the world, our job is to ensure we keep up with technology. So the more capital we can do to put back into the network, to continue to invest in the network, will keep us up to whatever that new technology. It might be something else in 15 years from now, but the more we can invest into our networks, the better off we stand in staying up with modern technology, ensuring the connectivity that is needed is there when it's needed. So.
That's very good, and I just don't want to be one of those politicians who's just looking this far down the road. I'd like to also kind of see where we may encounter some issues and some obstacles down the road, and so it makes me think that we don't want to have a weak link in the chain where we're thinking about infrastructure as it relates to broadband and making that easier, allowing that to be more successful, and then forget that there are other sort of third parties that will be important to make sure that when we get those people connected to the internet, that we're not falling behind on other areas as well. So I just using you as a soundboard, I really appreciate your information that you're sharing with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Terrence, going back to your original comments, you know what I do on the private sector for a business. You said you've been around for about 145 years. I got to compliment you. You look really good for 145 years old, especially doing what I do for a living, sir. Not
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
But to bring us back to the relevant comments, and I know it's because of your humble walk, you didn't really toot the horn, but we'd be remiss if we didn't spend 30 seconds talking about it, and I won't go more than 30 seconds, but, the successes, Mr. Chairman and members, telehealth, long before I got here, so I'm not tooting my horn. This is folks who recognize that and made the investment in South Carolina through that funding the broadband expansion, even before the $400 million from DC, which is greatly appreciated. But the successes include far-reaching, the Telehealth Act that we were able to do. We have forever changed how healthcare is being delivered here in South Carolina due to that work that's happening and being able to layer that telehealth services throughout, especially in these rural areas. And our Department on Aging getting recognized from an innovation perspective. You talk about the lockdown and during COVID, by partnering, Department of Aging, partnering with the Department of Education to bring these school buses out in these rural areas so that children had access to Wi-Fi that were in those areas that weren't able to be serviced at that point, and putting the Meals on Wheels, the meals for seniors and at-risk children on those school buses. South Carolina has a lot to be very, very proud of, and you and your company and those like you are to be commended and recognized for that. And so don't think for a moment that we've forgotten those short-term successes, because good quality leaders recognize you got to celebrate those short-term wins while you're going down the journey. So a long way of saying thank you for that, which then leads me to the final question. I love my representative to the next to me here, Gil Gatch's comments about making sure we're thinking about the 25-year vision of that, which leads me to this question. Are we truly ever going to get 100% penetration, which I think is Representative Kirby's reach? Are we going to get 100% reach and coverage throughout the entire state? Because it is truly a challenge. And, you know, it's only when we hear from our constituents that we realize, hey, these successes that we have at 98, 99% across the state. And I just want to make sure that we're being realist and that we're having that thorough conversation because I don't have the answer. I'm not in that telecommunications segment, but you and your folks are. Is 100% realistic and achievable? Or do we need to recognize that there are always going to be spots, nooks, and crannies throughout the state that we're just not going to be able to service?
So, number one, thank you for your comments. And thank you all, because all that stuff that happened and the ways we made it happen wouldn't have happened without you guys giving Department of Education and us the ability to collaborate and figure it out. So thank you all for, again, the policies that you guys put in place are amazing, and it's really helpful. I don't want to say, yes, we will get to 100%. What I will say is there's multiple technologies that will allow, there's probably going to be a one-off, right? If somebody somehow figures out to build a bunker underground, and we might not be able to reach that. But with the many different types of technology, which I mentioned, you know, a couple earlier, one of those being satellite, there are some one-off locations that are really hard. They might not have fiber. We may not have the ability to get fiber to them. But the advancement in technologies, Jim Stritzing over at the broadband office is doing a fantastic job. We are, and they are really going address by address, location by location, and they will know who does not have access to service. And they will try to figure out a way through technology in order to get service to them. I don't want to get on the record saying we'll get 100% because there may be a one-off, but I know the technology, I think it's there to get most locations, if not very close to all. Yes.
Thank you for that. I just want to make sure that as people listen to this, replaying this months and weeks and even years from now, that they know, Representative Kirby, that we see them, we know they're out there, and we're trying, now not for you folks out there who are trying to be off the grid and in those bunkers that Karen's talked about. Good luck, and make sure you got your food packs saved as well. But for those that are just living normal lives in these rural, far-reaching areas, we want to make sure when we say what's good for one is good for all. We're not picking winners and losers here.
That's right.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Hearing no other questions, I always say when I talk to my constituents about broadband, if you're not connected, you can't be part of the modern economy. And it matters to be connected. And, you know, I think it's one of the successes the state's had in the last 5 years of what we've done with that. Thank you all for bringing this topic. Like I said, it's a very niche topic that kind of falls into what we've been talking about with rural issues. And I wanted to kind of broach it with the committee. But thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If there are no other questions or comments, we can go ahead and adjourn. Like I said, I do ask, read through the education draft when you have free time over the Christmas holidays. Send us in some notes if you have them. As we update the draft, we'll keep sending it out. And once we have some drafts of BPP and potentially these two topics, we'll send those to you guys as well. My goal is to try to have a meeting that first week or two of session in January to roll out two bills, have the endorsement of the whole committee, and then hopefully get those passed this session. If we're all good with that, take a motion to adjourn. All right, all those in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.